I truly am standing on the shoulders of giants. Like guys work it, and this book, I could never bite off what he's bitten off in this work. He does a very very admirable job, and this is a conversation that is it has been happening for quite some time. Kath is so eloquently um, dances within this conversation. It's such a delicate conversation, and Kath has managed that beautifully. So I learned so much from Kath and so much from Guy. And it's important. It's an important conversation for us to have. There's a dichotomy, isn't there? That explicit teaching is bad. Or, we the Inquirer doesn't do explicit teaching, and that's just not the case. We know there's a time, and we know there's a place, and we know that's a part of our tool belt, don't we? And I think a characteristic of the inquiry practitioner is our willingness, our ability to be responsive to the needs that we are observing in our space, in our classrooms. At times, explicit instruction looks like sitting with a small group of students, 2 or 3 students, and doing a little mini lesson, if you will. At times, it looks like something for all students. At times, it looks like something for just one student. So I think we're always intentional, we're always explicit, and there's opportunity for us to take more control or relinquish more control always in our practice. In the assessment realm, I would argue the same thing. There are certain things we want to introduce and coach and model. So all students begin to create kind of a uniformed understanding of where we're going next. Maybe it's some common language. Maybe it's a common experience. And slowly, somewhere, there needs to be a shift of the role where after we've coached and modeled or explicitly done something or taught something, there needs to be some student ownership in that realm, some student engagement in an authentic way. So I really appreciate, Linda Darling Hammond, for example. She's just really spearheading this conversation globally, well, specifically across the US. That explicit teaching is not a bad thing, and we have to stop looking at it as so. I think explicit teaching, if that's all we're doing 100% of the time, is Mr. MacKenzie standing up in front of the class and lecturing to them, that's not great. And then the other side of that spectrum, 100% of the time, whatever that looks like, complete exploration, discovery 100% of the time, that's not awesome either. I think there's a spectrum there, and we all find ourselves at different spaces on the spectrum. I'm hoping it's because of what we're witnessing our students need. I hope it's because we're noticing something and we're responding to what it is that we're noticing, and we're pulling out those opportunities to get to more explicit teaching or get to more discovery or exploration or inquiry, if you will, because of something we're noticing our students need. Um, yeah, I hope that sheds light a bit on my opinion, but also this really rich, broader conversation that is happening that I hope we're all listening to, and I hope we're engaged in, because it's an important one. This isn't an either or. The explicit teaching parties over there and the inquiry parties over there. It's how do we recognize the benefit of it all, and be responsive to the students in an equitable way, as we are noticing and observing what's occurring before us.
I love all of that, Trevor. And like I was trying to make links as you were talking as well with, so you may know that Kath recently interviewed Guy for the launch of his book via Chapters International. And yeah, that so Guy's question was, and I was trying to find it in my notes, but I haven't got it exactly, but it was something like, for what purpose, for what, and kind of he was saying we were maybe asking the wrong question sometimes in education. I was just thinking about what you were saying about that kind of tool belt and knowing when to use kind of a more explorative approach and when to jump in with some kind of responsive direct teaching. And if we're thinking about for what, and part of our for what is developing lifelong learners who are curious and exploratory and self-sufficient, then that helps to guide where you might be on that continuum at any point too. So it's kind of it's to do with the listening to what the students need in that moment and responding either to small groups or individuals, like you were saying, but also having in that question in our head, what are those skills that we're developing? Kind of within Guy's learning river, where he talks about that bottom layer. So, and if we're not asking that question, then we're kind of doing a disservice, because we're not thinking about how we're developing the children as learners. So there's kind of
Absolutely.
that element that makes it even more complicated, but beautifully complicated and rich because,
It's
then
so
we.
much more rich, so much more rich, Becky. And as you're sharing, I'm thinking of a great benefit to everything that we've spoken about today. But with regards to the last two little share yourself and mine sharing, is having our students understand themselves better as learners. Certainly, as they're talking, as those thinking routines, and Ron Richards' work is a deep piece of my practice. I know you have Ron coming up shortly. Using thinking routines to elicit the talk and not just have that talk guide my next step so I can make connections. Like, great, I'm the expert in the room, but the goal is for students to understand themselves better as learners, for them to understand these competencies so they can leave. The enduring legacy of our time with students is that they have an increased heightened awareness of themselves. And so a part of the talk is encouraging that thinking, that hard work, that heavy lifting, that flexing into the competencies and making that really transparent. So it's twofold. I'm learning from you, but you're learning about yourselves and about one another. And so I guess it's threefold then, isn't it?